Anytime.
Bill, thanks for having me in your home.
Bro, you look so news anchor, man. Look, he looked me on 60 Minutes. He's like Steve Croft, this guy. Look at him with his blue and his blue.
Just happy. I'm just trying to get back with you one day, someday in the future.
On the show, anytime.
Well, let's talk about the show, right? I mean, the political climate right now, it's very polarized, very passionate. And you guys put liberals and conservatives together. How do you think your show contributes to the American political climate?
Who cares? I'm just trying to make a buck. You're kidding. When was that my manifesto? No, I mean, well, first of all, we're trying to make people laugh. Most of all, I do the show for people who, want to know what's going on in the news, probably don't have time because they have kids and jobs and life, all that kind of stuff. So they want a wrap-up show at the end of the week. Friday night's a good time. Obviously, it's better if you watch the news and then get your diet of humor, also knowing the news, kind of the way in college they told you, well, you can read the Cliff Notes, but read the book too. But people don't read the book, they just read the Cliff Notes. So as long as I'm going to be the Cliff Notes, I'm going to try to do it as well as I can. And some information is better than none.
One of the things we see with you, you put liberals and conservatives together, and a lot of times they have a difficult time talking.
They talk over each other. That's true. They talk past each other, right? I mean, it's not like Politically Incorrect where they used to yell. We try to avoid that. We try to be a little more adult on this show. But it is true that they don't really hear each other. There isn't a lot of common belief. I mean, it used to be an issue like global warming. Well, we both admit it's something, and then we argue about how we solve it. Once the Republicans went to, I can't hear you, it's just, it's a hoax, it's made up, it's so Al Gore can feather his nest, whatever they're saying, so scientists can get funding, all this nonsense, then how can you even solve a problem if you can't agree that there is one?
Right. There's so many issues now where we don't seem to even agree on the terminology or the language or the facts.
Or we brought it back last week, the phrase we coined, black tracking, which is the act of disagreeing with Obama once he agrees with you. How can you solve a problem if you can't even agree with yourself? Because as soon as Obama says, you know what, I love America too. Well, then I don't love America as much as I thought I did.
So you've had a long run at this. You started obviously at Comedy Central, then you go to ABC. Now you're on pay cable, right? The HBO.
3 networks, 21 years. Isn't that amazing? 2 shows, but just same dressing room. I've been in this dressing room since '96. That's gangster.
But the rules different from basic cable, network, and pay cable?
The times are different, even more so. I mean, when I was on ABC, we could not talk about pot. Unless, I mean, we did all the time, of course, because I was on pot. But we couldn't talk about it unless they were very strict. You have to have somebody on the other side to say it's bad. Some of the things I was fine with, like you can't recommend it for children. I never have recommended it for children. Children ruin adult things. I would never recommend children, but I would never recommend pot for children. Okay. But it was amazing the way, we went from that to, of course, anybody can make a pot joke anywhere. One of the biggest fights we had at ABC was I wanted to do a sketch called Harry Pothead when Harry Potter first came out, and that was too outrageous.
Wow.
So that's where we've come. I mean, as far as the networks, I think people think I have a great deal more freedom on HBO than I had on ABC. I have more. But, ABC let me say pretty much anything I wanted. Pot was, I swear to God, a bigger issue than any other issue. I just got fired for it eventually. That's what doesn't happen here because I don't have sponsors. They can't pull out.
Exactly. I mean, that's the big difference, right? I mean, there is no line here.
I've always said what I wanted, and they were pretty cool with that.
So TV's in your blood, right? Your dad, Bill Sr., was
radio.
He worked at NBC.
Radio.
Not in front of the camera, right? But as an editor and on radio, right?
Right.
Love to talk about.
News is in my blood, right? He was a newsman. Never was on TV, but yes, he was a newsman. That is absolutely in my blood.
Known for his tirades about Richard Nixon, right?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in my father was the classic Irish Democrat, Irish American Democrat. He was in his heaven in like the early 60s. John F. Kennedy was in the White House, the first Irish president. Pope John, the liberal pope, he liked the liberal pope. I mean, I hated church, and the thing that saved me eventually from going to church was my father didn't like Pope Paul. The conservative Pope came in, and eventually my father was like, I'm quitting going to church because I don't like the Pope. And I was like, whatever reason, man, it's all good as long as we're not going to church.
What would Bill Sr. say about real time?
Oh, he'd love it. I mean, first of all, I'm his kid. My father was... He was of that era where he could not see any bad in his kids.
Okay.
I once came home. It was January. I was college. I was a new pot smoker. My friend and I were out smoking pot in the car. It was about 10 below zero. And we pull into the driveway with all the windows rolled down because we wanted to air out the car.
No, of course.
But then we forgot the windows were rolled down. So we pull into the car. It's 10 below zero with all the windows rolled down. My father was like, why the windows rolled? I said, oh, God, we're busted on pot. He farted, and he just believed that. He just never would have thought it occurred to him that his son would be doing pot.
So, Flip a District is really interesting. You're sort of crossing over into, as you call it, meddling.
Meddling.
Is this good for American democracy that Bill Maher's taking this advocacy role?
First of all, it's not all that serious. Yes, we possibly could flip a district. The problem, Toure, is that there's only about half a dozen districts that are even flippable.
Right.
This is really what we're trying to do, is shine a light on this problem. That somehow the American people, when you poll them, give Congress a favorability rating, sometimes in the single digits.
Oh, yeah.
And yet they return over 90% of them to their office. Incumbency is at the all-time high. The only way you can get thrown out of office is to die or tweet a picture of your penis. That's about it. So we would like to, at least if we can, flip somebody, shed light on that problem, and maybe we'll get lucky, and we will. I mean, there's a lot of people out there we have found who are so dissatisfied with their representation, and it's a shame. People deserve better, but because of, gerrymandering and just the way they, come on, how do the Republicans win? They cheat. That's their method. They cheat. I mean, we could beat around the bush, but their policies are, if you go down the line, now people, of course, sometimes don't understand the policies, but they hate Obamacare because it has Obama's name in it, but
right.
If you ask the individual proponents of it,
they like that.
Like all that. How do Republicans, they cheat. They fool people, they gerrymander, they voter repression, they're cheaters.
Last thing, as a comedian, which candidate do you want to see become the next president?
Well, as a comedian, I'd like to see, I don't know, Sarah Palin or Rand Paul. The race, I think, that would be interesting would be Hillary, and it's going to be Hillary, obviously, and Rand Paul, because Rand Paul, if he wasn't half crazy, I really like the part of him that's not crazy. He could steal millennial votes from Hillary, because he's good on, let's wrap up the empire, America, and that's very appealing to young people, very appealing to me. He's good on personal responsibility, personal, safety from prying eyes in the government and stuff like that. He could make it interesting. I mean, the Republicans, the slim pickings on that side.
We could very well see that.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.